Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode. So this was a segment originally intended for June 2020's monthly movie news, where Daniel and I start the episode by giving you a quick catch-up on what we've been doing, watching, all that jazz, now that we're able to get back into a steady rhythm of recording. However, the two of us, and by two of us I mean Daniel, went on a little long talking about all the movies and shows we've been watching, as well as sharing our motivation for why we've been watching what we are during such a buzzword incoming, unprecedented time. From listing off every single movie I've watched from March to July, to Daniel sharing his fascination with the WWE, his traumatic experience watching Tom Hooper's Cats, and his frustration with Christian-outrage culture toward a particular Disney animated show, we hope you enjoy this little episode. As always, if you enjoy Cinematic Doctrine, be sure to leave a review on your respective podcast app. And if you want to take your support to a whole new level, check out our Cinematic Doctrine Patreon, where you can gain access to exclusive content like choosing a movie we discuss in the podcast each month, as well as exclusive access to the SynDoc Pre-Show, a show available only to our Patreon supporters. For as little as $3 a month, you gain access to all them sweet perks, as well as the express joy of knowing you're supporting us here on the podcast. Anyways, let's get started with the quarantine binge. We survived.
I mean, for now, we don't know what the future will hold. I mean, as we record this, the United States is hitting... Let's not talk about, I'm sure, the last thing anyone listening to this wants to hear is stuff about the pandemic where, a movie podcast. I don't know what they're talking about from the get-go. We're just like, oh, man, this COVID thing, huh? That's crazy. But, that's the problem, is it is the thing that is affecting everything. And so even when you want to talk about movies or what's up with that. But that said, and the flip side is that this has been an amazing opportunity. Well, I wouldn't say amazing opportunity. We are left with not many things to do. So as movie people, I think the expectation is that we're just going to be sitting here emptying out our Netflix queue, finally cracking into the Criterion collection, maybe watching some foreign films. And I can speak for myself and say that is not at all what I did. But Melvin, what has kind of been your media diet, so to speak?
I have watched, I think I wrote down here 65 movies since March 12th, which in my area is when schools officially closed. And so that's what I would consider quarantine starting, in my opinion. That's what that to me is the big thing that in my local area greatly showed to the population here, oh, this is happening. And so I decided to write these things out and thought it'd be fun if Daniel here just basically reads the name of the movie and then I immediately respond with the one sentence review, moving on all the way down the list. And I thought that'd be cute. So yeah, here we go.
That was such a smooth transition, Melvin.
Wasn't it? I'm so good at this stuff. Seamless. I'm probably blushing right now. It's so bashful. I've been doing podcasting for a year, but I'm still just feel like a little kid. So just doing something kind of fun and cute.
That's the worst visual. Okay. So...
Aww. Why watch some movies? That's what I did. As I do.
Oh, you scamp. You movie watching scamp you. All right. You want
making fun of me in public.
I would never. Do you want to do this, Melvin?
I want to do this. Okay. I prepared this last night. I want to do this.
You're so proud of
Come
this
on,
bit.
Mom!
You're so proud of this
Come
bit.
on.
Let's see if it pays off. Friday the 13th, Part 4, Jason Lives. That's Part 6, isn't it?
It's Part 6. You want to do it again?
Nope. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives.
Not only is it the single Friday the 13th worth watching, it's a fantastic horror comedy thrill ride.
To all the boys have loved before.
Too pure, too pure, too pure, too pure, too pure.
Inglourious Bastards.
Combines a love for filmmaking and a love for killing Nazis. Also, don't forget that the Vatican helped Nazi war criminals escape Europe after the Second World War.
Yeah. The Perfect Date.
Not as bad as I was led to believe the Noah Centineo Netflix cinematic universe is.
I Am Legend.
This movie has a pop culture footprint I still don't understand, and Will Smith in general has a pop culture footprint I still don't understand.
Ooh. Pet Sematary, 1989.
Effective when it needs to be, charming at others, but definitely one of those the book will always be better kind of stories.
Shin Godzilla.
I don't know what's scarier, bug-eyed kaiju or Japan's post-World War II restrictions.
The Irishman.
Still hits like a sack of bricks, except that sack of bricks is endless stream of tears down my face.
Samson, 2018.
Too boring to be called a movie, too off-base to be called inspired by historical biblical events.
The King, 2019.
Chalamet's hair still looks great as always, and I think this movie is far better than what it's typically credited.
The Goldfinch.
Roger Deakins sure knows how to shoot a movie, but that doesn't mean it's a good movie.
Dread.
I Am the Law.
Iron Man.
Represents all the positives and negatives I have with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Exciting, engaging, but tonally inconsistent.
The Incredible Hulk.
A shameful disaster.
Tusk.
Stop falling for the Tusk meme.
Moon.
Unfortunately, the hyperbole used in Moon against capitalism is all too real.
Catfish.
You know how it ends, but you have absolutely no idea how it ends.
Despicable Me.
I used to hate Minions, but I had a dream once where I saved Minions from starvation, and ever since I've liked Minions, so now I think Minions are cool.
Iron Man 2.
I think this movie is better than people give it credit for, but it's also an utter incomplete mess.
Thor.
My wife fell asleep.
After Earth.
Everything about this movie is wrong.
The Willoughbys.
Everything about this movie is adorable and wonderful and amazing and worth watching, even if it feels challenging.
The Shawshank Redemption.
I hear people like this movie.
Middleditch and Schwartz.
These guys are basically the best of friends, and while their improv might not be the best I've ever seen, their charisma and kindness is what it's all about.
Swallow.
Fantastic movie until the final scene completely undermines everything it was trying to do.
Extraction.
It's like John Wick if an edgy 13-year-old wrote a fan fiction about Thor, except he landed in Southeast Asia.
Amy.
So unbelievably powerful, you have no idea how dehydrated I was after this movie.
Big Elmo, A Puppeteer's Journey.
Puppets are wonderful. Also, watch The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance.
The Monster.
It's kind of boring, but it has some interesting visuals, so it's kind of comfy, too.
Captain America, The First Avenger.
That first half sure was great, but that second half was too campy for me.
The Avengers.
Takes a while to go from a TV movie to a Hollywood production.
Step Brothers.
The mood piece to end all mood pieces.
Underwater.
This was a blast, and I'll never forgive myself for missing it in theaters.
Dangerous Lies.
There's a character named Dwight in this movie, and you don't realize how funny that is until you learn the director's name is Michael Scott.
The Birds.
I love how women-centric this movie is, and I can't wait to rewatch it and pick things apart.
Onward.
It's okay.
TFW No GF.
Captures the conflicting tone of using the internet in 2020. Cynical, overwhelming, heartbreaking, and tiresome.
The Bridge of San Luis Rey.
It's bad, but I stand Kathy Bates.
Waves.
I checked, and yeah, it's still the best movie of 2019.
Tiger Tail.
A somber, slow-paced, often poignant film, despite never saying anything particularly new.
Jerry Seinfeld, 23 Hours to Kill.
Jerry, get iPad.
That was a good one. A Ghost Story.
Most people will think it's absurd when they start a ghost story, but down the road they'll realize they can't shake it, and that's a good thing.
Bombshell.
It's problematic in that you can really tell it's a man directing a film about women being sexually abused, but otherwise there are still things to appreciate about this movie.
Annie Hall.
Recontextualized now that we know more about Woody Allen, but that doesn't mean this film isn't great.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Edgar Wright's magnum opus.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
It blows my mind how good this movie turned out, and not because it's a different Spider-Man, but because it's a Sony movie.
John Henry.
Ironically, a film for white suburban dads.
Capone.
Instant cult classic that will no doubt be revisited.
The Case for Christ.
The only PureFlix movie I've enjoyed, and also it's pretty dang good.
The Lovebirds.
A curious watch purely because it was near immediately taken from theaters and sold to Netflix, and that alone made it interesting to me.
Wendy.
One of my favorite movies of 2020, but it seems like Wendy isn't being appreciated like I would have hoped.
Crazy Rich Asians.
This was a lot of fun, but as far as Chinese American films are concerned, The Farewell still reigns supreme.
Unsettling Scenes.
Interesting little art piece that made a splash on Letterboxd that I was eager to watch, but honestly, I wasn't all that invested.
Fantasy Island.
Dude, it's bad.
The Wrong Missy.
Dude, it's so bad.
The Vast of Night.
Wonderful love letter to 50s era radio programming that has a lot to enjoy in the vein of classic sci-fi.
Come to Daddy.
Dude, it's really bad.
American Gospel, Christ Alone.
You know all about it because you all listened to that episode, right?
Clueless.
The rare kind of comedy that gets exponentially better.
Clueless holds up so well. The Five Bloods.
An indictment on modern America claiming that the United States didn't become corrupt, it always was.
Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich.
A true crime miniseries too closely connected to figures related to the Epstein story to really do any good, but gives a platform for survivors to have their voices heard.
846.
One of the most important pieces of media released in 2020 and available for free on YouTube for anyone who doesn't quite understand the weight of the current civil unrest.
Artemis Fowl.
A rare kind of movie where I was in perpetual confusion and never once got my footing.
Gilmore Girls.
The single best thing I watched during quarantine and will always be a part of my favorite memories with Catherine during this bizarre time.
All right, well, that's a lot of movies, Melvin.
And you know, one of the questions that you wrote down in the beginning was, how have your viewing habits changed? And I wrote down, despite how many movies I just said out loud, I really haven't watched as much as I typically would given this much time off.
Right, like your free time to movie watching ratio has actually gone down, but you just happen to have so much more free time that you've still watched a decent amount of films.
Probably. I mean, I think I would have seen about 65 movies. I mean, it's been a couple months, so at this point I think I would have seen about 65 projects, maybe a little less, maybe 50 or so, and probably even more if I was really digging into it further. But what actually happened was during this time, I ended up playing like more video games, or actually just doing more work than I would have expected. Also, I was sick for like 3 weeks, so that stopped a lot of movie watching.
Yeah, that'll do it. I'm somebody who movies are kind of my getaway from things. It's part of why I'm such a big avid goer of like going to the cinemas. First off, the lack of separation kind of hurt my ability to watch movies, but also like I'm sure people listening to this podcast are just so tired of hearing me talk about this. But just for context, I was working in a hospital, I was away from my family, blah 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 blah. But during that time, I just did not want to watch anything with any sort of tension whatsoever. I could not stand, like, I know so many people watch Contagion and Outbreak, and you even did an episode on Contagion, I believe.
Yeah, we did actually have a Contagion episode. I think that was the Patreon chosen film in February, and it's also, I think, the last audio essay that we've done for the podcast too.
This is why, like, people picked that. They wanted to hear to talk about it. I did not want to even think about diseases or like people getting sick or anything remotely stressful during this time. I just didn't have it in me, and it partially was because of the pandemic, partially because of where I worked, and partially because of where I was in relation to just my life at that point in time. But I did watch a couple things, but what I was looking for was more really like comfort food viewing experience, specifically things I didn't want to have to think about or like to process. And so I went through 3 major stages as far as my entertainment diet concerned. The first is I signed up for a free trial of the WWE Network. Are you familiar with the service, Melvin?
Not the service, but I know the WWE.
Yes. So they have their own streaming service because doesn't everyone have their own streaming service? We often talk about the big ones like Netflix, Hulu, whatever, but the reality is everyone kind of has their thing. NBC has their own thing. The UFC has their own streaming service. And the WWE has their own streaming service. But what makes the UFC and WWE interesting is they have, because they are have mostly monopolized their various industries, they have bought up the entire like tape libraries for other organizations. It's like UFC owns all like Strikeforce and Pride, and the WWE almost tragically owns the entire history of like American professional wrestling. Like they have tape libraries with footage dating back to the 50s and 40s and stuff. And so I just like, I need something so stupid and so completely unengaged that I can just sit there and like not even just not think about it, but I can almost be basically almost asleep and this thing will be playing in front of me. I don't have to think about it. And so I put that on. And I am ashamed to admit, I watched a year's worth of WWE in a month. And that is not hyperbolic. I watched WrestleMania 14, watched every, because so there's weekly television, there's Raw, and then partially through they added a second show, Heat. This is 1998. And then there's every month there's a pay-per-view. So I don't know how you do that, but I watched WrestleMania 14 through WrestleMania 15 in a month. It was wild. Like, I don't know if people want me to share my thoughts on this particular moment in time, because it's fascinating. It's fascinating for a couple of reasons. First off, how times have changed.
He's just gonna do it. He's just doing it.
I won't do it. But like,
no, do it. That'd be great.
This is not.
I just wrote up a thing and it took 12 minutes to get through it. Who knows if it's good? I hope it's good. I thought it was fun, but
that's true.
But do it. Show your true colors.
What first, before I get into this, what is your understanding of professional wrestling? What do you know about professional wrestling?
Anything I know about professional wrestling is what Jim Sterling puts in when he intercuts stuff during his videos, where it's just him like local professional wrestling. That's kind of it.
Good for him.
So nothing.
Okay.
Is it happening? He's building
2-hour episode coming in. I'm not going to do that to everyone. For those who do not know, professional wrestling is a scripted form of entertainment where 2 or more combatants enter into a ring and engage in a predetermined fixed athletic competition. And that plays into preordained and written storylines. And professional wrestling is very, very fascinating to me for so many reasons. One of them is that it's one of the true American art forms where it's something that kind of has its roots in American culture and is wholly ours. It was created here, similar to basketball or jazz. It started in the carnival circuits where promoters would like have local strongmen and they would they would challenge people from the crowd to fight these like strongmen that they would tour in the circuses. But as a way to warm up the crowd, they and some of the other like fighters would have like a little like fixed fight to get the crowd going before they would then challenge them from the audience. But then they realized that like these fixed fights, partially because they could script them, drew bigger crowds than like somebody coming in to fight like the strongman from the circus. So that itself started growing, and wrestling became sort of this like, a regional activity throughout the 20s and 30s. And the way it used to work is you would have a different territory in each area, whether it would be St. Louis territory, New York territory, Midwest territory. And each territory would have its own set of wrestlers and they would write stories. And when the wrestler had a run, like people get sick of him, he'd just move to a different territory, et cetera, et cetera. And then sometime around the 80s, and this is all important for a reason, a guy by the name of Vince McMahon, who is one of the most infamous strange people to ever exist upon God's green earth, took over his father, Vince McMahon's Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And he decided to build his own little media empire. And I'm not getting into the whole history of professional wrestling here, but it's its own little fascinating thing. But one of the things he did is he basically broke all the handshake agreements that his father built for those territories. He signed up all the wrestlers. He bought up TV time. He basically created the World Wrestling Federation. And for many people, that's what you think of when you think wrestling. You think the WWE, formerly WWF. You think Hulk Hogan, Randy Macho Man Savage, Andre the Giant, all these people. And wrestling is actually much larger and has much larger history than that. But I mention all this because Vince McMahon did a lot of bad. He hurt the industry in a lot of ways. But what he did was he tapped into the pop culture nerve, and he created what really embodied the entire 80s aesthetic, where Hulk Hogan was this guy who loved America, and he had that amazing theme song. Have you heard the theme song Real American?
I feel like if you were to hum it, I would know it.
Yeah, I am a real American, fight for the rights. It was written by what's his name? He wrote Honky Tonk Coochie Hoo, or whatever that song is called.
Oh man,
he played guitar and Eat It and a lot of Weird Al's records. Rick Derringer, that's his name.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, so they had this 80s cheese that people liked, and then it was like wholesome, and Hulk Hogan said say your prayers and eat your vitamins and all this stuff. And then society changed. Hair metal went out, wrestling went out. That in came the 90s, and the 90s became this like much more like transgressive, angry time. We had like the celebrities were Marilyn Manson and Eminem. MTV was huge. Jerry Springer was on television, and wrestling was still trying to present things like Doink the Clown and Max Moon and all these like ridiculous things. And so a shift had to come in, and that shift became what became known as the Attitude Era, which is they decided to have the most offensive, horrible things that you could put on television and get away with it. Stone Cold Steve Austin was a hero. He'd give the finger. Like they had these horrible storylines where like women would have like rip each other's clothes off, and women would have like, it's weird, but it really tapped into the cultural moment, and this gave rise to people like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mick Foley, and the future president of the United States, Donald Trump, eventually.
Yeah, that's true. Oh man,
there's something so comforting about watching something that is such a relic of its time, where it's simple. There's something so beautifully simple about it, where it presents good guys versus bad guys. And okay, the lines get blurred a little bit because the good guy is a guy named Stone Cold who's flipping people off and swearing and like doesn't follow the rules and does all these things. But it's something so, I needed to watch something where they're clearly defined bad guys and the good guys come in and defeat them, and then the world kind of resets itself and everything's fine, but it also keeps going so that it doesn't run out. So I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, professional wrestling is fascinating to me, and it's something that I really love and adore, but right now it's kind of on fire. I don't know if anyone's following this, but the WWE has continued to run shows. They're still going during this pandemic, and they're having shows in Florida. And I don't know if you know anything about Florida right now, but there's a giant COVID outbreak going on. There recently was an outbreak within the WWE. As of this writing, as of this recording, there's an estimated 30 people have gotten it. Because what they're doing is they're still having they're not having crowds, so to speak, but they're having shows on like a closed set, and other wrestlers sit in the crowd to compensate for the fact there's no crowd, but it's stupid. It's a stupid idea. And so people are actually getting sick. And so COVID is actually having an outbreak in the WWE, but they're still having shows.
Right. I was just going to say, I read that they were, even as new cases are starting in the area, like in their area, within their facility, they just are like, well, we'll just quarantine them, but we'll hold another show. And you're like, how much sweat got on that set?
It's so dumb, Melvin. You don't understand how. And the thing is, wrestling fans are like, we don't need wrestling, dude. Like, we can survive. They've released a statement. This is honest to God. What they said was, this man believes, and they've referred to him as our leader, which is creepy. But they were like, he believes that the world needs entertainment right now. And it's just like, I'm doing it for you guys. The WWE is here for everyone. It's like the WWE is more profitable than it's ever been. It's tanking in popularity for a variety of reasons. Because of international deals they have with distribution, they're making more money than they ever have, than the height of their popularity in the 80s and 90s. But they just keep going. And like I said, they have this massive tape library. They could run old shows from now till like our grandkids die, and they would not run out of content. There's no reason for them to be taping shows, and there's no reason for them to doing. They they had this amazing event that I'm going to admit was awesome, where they had all the wrestlers go to the building, their office building, and race to the top of the building and fight up their building to try and get like a briefcase to the top of the building. And it's incredible. It's one of the most bizarre things I've ever watched, where they had little skits where like different characters in the past popped out of rooms as they're walking up the building and all this stuff. But there's like 15 people there wrestling each other. Like, you don't even need it. You could just have one-on-one matches. You don't need to have like dig dog piles during a pandemic. It just, there's reality is not seeping in, and it's getting people sick and it's getting people hurt. And they were even planning on having actual fans attending shows by August because they're insane. And they're having a show taping today, even though people tested positive yesterday. It's pure madness. It is pure insanity. And I don't understand why they're doing that. And it's strange when something that you care about and love is actively hurting people. It's a weird feeling. Like, I'm sitting there, I'm a fan. I have a subscription to their service, and I'm just like, this is bordering on wrong. Like, it's getting to the point where it's wrong for me to give them money when they're taking my money. And the real kicker on top of all of this is they fired like a whole bunch of wrestlers as a quote unquote cost cutting measure, even though, as I mentioned, their profits are higher than ever. So it's just strange. I don't know.
Just the phrase "something you love is hurting people" is absolutely relevant to something we're going to be talking about later. And yeah, isn't it weird living in an age where unfortunately sin is rampant?
Yeah, it's weird because part of it's weird is like wrestling as a thing that exists is known to be a seedy, underhanded business with an incredibly shady past and still runs shadily. So there's a part of me that feels bad because this is just an externalization of something I've deep down known for a very long time. But wrestling as a company and an industry, wrestling as an industry that exists, has hurt so many people for so long that there's a part of me that's always been like looking the other way, just like, yeah, you know, that's just wrestling. What can you do? You know, this is just how it is. You know, one of the first big female wrestlers, Fabulous Moolah, is accused of basically being a human trafficker for her entire career. And she's in the WWE Hall of Fame. You know, Jimmy Snuka is again in the Hall of Fame, and he probably murdered his girlfriend. Like, the list goes on as far as like people that have done shady and horrible things. But for whatever reason, I was always just like, yeah, well, what can you do? And which sounds stupid for something that is so inconsequential. Wrestling is a thing that is dumb. As much as I love it, like deep down in my heart, I love it so much. And part of why I love it is because 90% of people listening to this are like, yeah, but that's stupid. Why do you like that? That's part of why I like it so much, is because most of you listening to this are just like, that's dumb. And I'm like, I know it's dumb, but it's dumb in a way that I understand and connect with. And most people will not and cannot understand it. But I also watched Cats. Did you see Cats?
Which one got you more convicted? the WWE or Cats?
Cats is the worst thing that happened to me since February. What happened is I
staying away from my wife for a couple months. I don't know. I could do that again if I had to choose between that and Cats.
Here's the setup. Did I ever talked about this on the podcast? Have I talked about Cats?
No, we haven't talked about Cats yet. We should.
So I was quarantined. People use the word quarantine now, like flippantly. Quarantine is a very specific thing that happens, but I've been just saying
it's kind of like hacking.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, I got hacked on Facebook. It's like, you just didn't log out, dude.
It's become so. I was living in an Airbnb with two of my coworkers because of the pandemic, and there's an awkward thing where it's like you and two people that you don't know are living together, and we live together for reasons that are not good. We've all lived with people who are immunocompromised or vulnerable, and so, but we all work in hospitals. We had to live together, so these are not the best circumstances to meet somebody. You don't. And I told like them the first day that I met them was like, listen, I don't expect you to be my best friend or anything. I understand that we're here because we have to be. You don't have to talk. We have to be friends, but at the same time, like, this is March, April. Like, this is peak. At the time, we thought this is as worse as it's getting. And, you know, we can't exactly go hang out. You know, we weren't going out to eat or doing anything like that. It's just, we would go to work and come back, and it's just the three of us living in this house together. So eventually you're going to have to start talking to each other. And so one of the things that was suggested was like, hey, let's have a movie night. And we were looking through the Comcast movies that are on there because that's the cable that the Airbnb had. And at first we came across Cats, and all of us have heard of Cats. We've heard this tale of this strange movie that's the new So Bad It's Good kind of movie. And at first we tried to rent it on the thing. We couldn't rent it because we just didn't have the capacity. We click on it and it's like, oh, you can't do that. So we ended up watching something else. But I was insistent. I was like, we gotta watch Cats. We have to do this. This has to be their big peak bonding moment as coworkers and roommates and people stuff in this pandemic together. So I actually asked around from friends, and a friend of mine had bought it on Blu-ray, and he sent me the DVD code thing that comes in when you buy a Blu-ray. It has like, have it everywhere you go. So I had like the movies on demand thing. I used the code, I downloaded it, and I found an HDMI cable. I was like, guys, we have to do this. We have to do this. So we ordered dinner, we got some wine, and we sat down and we started watching Cats. And have you seen Cats, Melvin? Have you watched this movie?
I saw it in theaters. And Kat and I pre-gamed, and then she fell asleep in the theater. And when she woke up, Judi Dench was looking right at her and speaking to her,
staring right in her soul.
So, yeah, I've seen Cats. How tough are you?
You know how the movie begins, right? It's just
like a nightmare.
Yes, there's a sharp, jarring music, and there's no context, and it's big and loud and bombastic. So first, like 4 or 5 minutes, I am just laughing uncontrollably. I cannot explain or understand what is happening. And here's some further context. My roommates are not movie people. They are not like, oh, like, let's go see The Room, let's watch Troll 2, let's watch Neil Breen. They're just, that's just not their thing. You know, they're just not that's not the type of entertainment. They're not like bad movie, ironic watching type of people. They're just people that when we were trying to select a movie and we saw Uncut Gems, they're like, that's an Adam Sandler movie, right? Like, you know, this isn't their thing. And so they've heard this movie's funny is what they've heard. And so the movie's starting and they're just baffled. They do not understand what is happening. Do you not understand? They're like looking at me like, why did you suggest this? And I was like, so I don't know. Like, good question. And so we're watching, and at first it is kind of funny bad. And then 30 minutes in, it is fully dawned on me, this is not a funny bad, you have to see this is so bad it's good kind of movie. This is just a bad movie. This is an unbearable, unmitigated disaster. It is a slog. It is painful. One of my roommates falls asleep about 45 minutes in. The other one is like dozing off, and it just keeps going. The movie's like forever long. It's so long. And there's a part of me that's enjoying it because of just how bizarre it is, or I'm just like, it's almost like visiting when you go on a vacation somewhere, but there's a historical war site or a museum there. You gotta go. Like, you gotta see Niagara Falls, you gotta see Statue of Liberty, you gotta see whatever. You just have to do it. And there's that kind of sense when you're watching Cats where you're just like, I gotta see it. It's on the bucket list. I gotta see it. And it just keeps going. And my roommates are not laughing. They are suffering. They're just, it's this thing of like, we started the movie, we gotta finish it. But they're both sleeping by the end, and I'm just sitting there, and I feel so bad. I've subjected them to this just unholy punishment for some reason. Like, God has already punished us with this pandemic. Why is he further taking more from us? Like, he killed Job's family. Why has he got to kill his livestock too? But no, he has sent cats to exercise even further sins from our souls. And so it's just, the movie finally, it gets to the Judi Dench part. And my roommate's just like, one of my roommates gets up and she's just like, this is over. And she just goes to her room and goes to bed. And our other roommate is just like asleep on the couch. And then there's just me sitting there. And finally it's over. And I go upstairs and I put wrestling back on to comfort me. I'm like, oh, it's time to watch Royal Rumble, you know, and it was bad. Every person that lied to me and was like, oh, you're so funny. It's not funny. It's funny to talk about because it's strange. It's very much a interesting thing that exists, but it's not The Room. It's not even Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's just a horrible thing that exists that it had all these factors involved. Like, it's a known property. All the theater kids that are familiar with Cats were finally glad the rest of the world found out about the thing that they've known about for so long. My grandmother loved musicals. Loved musicals. She's passed away. Hated Cats. She hated Cats with a passion because she was like, it's stupid. It's so stupid. It's not about anything. There's no plot, whatever. And she was right. I don't know why I didn't listen to her. Somewhere her ghost or in heaven was just like, I told you, Dan. I don't know why I didn't listen to me. I told you Cats is bad. So next time we had a movie night, we put on The Interview, which is horrible, but was better than Cats.
That's the Apple Plus thing, right?
No, it's that movie about North Korea that Seth Rogen and James
Franco. Yeah, because we all thought Kim Jong-un was dead.
Yeah. That was kind of why we were just thinking about it. We were just like
that short-lived part of part of the year.
Season 3 of 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. Who remembers? I'd say we had a pretty good time of watching movies then. watching our stuff. I mean, that's not bad. Some good stories.
I feel like I didn't really explain anything about wrestling. Like, I just went on a weird short history of professional wrestling, cut it off early because I was like, this isn't working.
That's something on TV. That's cinema. I mean, it's not. I mean, Martin Scorsese probably wouldn't call it cinema.
No,
he'd be like, it's a theme park ride, but it's still part of the TV industry world and stuff. It's cool.
It's impossible to explain to people why it's a thing that exists and why people like it. And I feel like I didn't do a good job at all, but there you go. For the most part, I was trying to watch things that were like comforting. So I rewatched things like Ready or Not, or like I rewatched Get Out, like things I've already seen and knew what was happening. It wouldn't catch me off guard or make me uncomfortable anyway. And I watched a lot of cartoons. I watched Solar Opposites, which is pretty good. I watched The Owl House. Are you familiar with The Owl House?
I'm not, no.
You may know The Owl House from an article that Christians were posting on Facebook a lot, which said, quote, Disney's new cartoon features the king of demons teaching a girl to be a witch. Did you see this article get posted around? Because I saw it in the Reform Pub, and every Christian group I'm in posted about 50 times.
That's the one where they were saying, like, don't let your kids watch this because it's going to indoctrinate you into Satanism?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. That is the one. And I was planning on watching it because Alex Hirsch, who writer and creator of Gravity Falls, was involved in it in a voice acting capacity. So I was planning on watching it. And then once I saw the article, I was like, well, now I have to watch this thing. I have to watch this horrible, evil, demonic show. It's on Disney, apparently. Do you care if I spoil something that happens in literally the first episode of The Owl House?
No, go ahead.
So, based on the title I told you, you're expecting this to be like Harry Potter, but if Aleister Crowley had rewritten Harry Potter with Anton LaVey. The first episode featured, it's Portal Fantasy, a 15-year-old girl who lives in a fantasy world. Like, she reads a lot of fantasy novels, who's not fitting in at school, is supposed to go to a summer camp. And it's a really funny pilot where, like, the summer camp is literally a summer camp to make your kids normal, where they're supposed to learn how to do their taxes and stuff like that. And so she's waiting for the bus to come pick her up for summer camp, and an owl, she throws away one of her fantasy novels that she holds dearly. She's like, I guess it's time to grow up. An owl mysteriously comes and grabs the book. She follows the owl, and it takes her to the portal into this magic fantasy world where she meets this witch voiced by Wendy Malick, who's this amazing voice actress. She's really great, and who has this like demon thing that's like her pet. That's the king of demons. And basically, in this magic world, there's this place called the Conformatorium, where as this evil jailer is trying to punishes people for being too different and wants them to go to this place to make them more normal. So, I mean, obviously the point and the subtext is very, very blunt. And at this place, they have the crown that the King of Demons had, and they have to go get it again. Except the gag at the end of the episode is they get there, and the crown is a Burger King crown. And the King of Demons is not really King of Demons. He's this adorable little pet. And Rita, the owl lady, with him and Wendy Malick, is like, I just let him play. You know, it makes him feel like he's important. So let him think he's the King of Demons. it's just, if there's ever a clearer example of you can't fall for the Christian like outrage machine all the time, guys, come on. It was literally a joke that they tell in the first episode. That's not the plot of the show. That's not what the show is about. It's not about a girl being trained by demons to be a horrible sorcerer that hates Jesus or whatever. That's not what the show is about. It's just, oh my gosh, none of you watched it. None of you watched it. I can't believe you all fell for this article. It's the same crowd of like, I don't trust the media, you gotta do your own research, that's why I'm not wearing masks. And it's just like, but guys, did you know there's a satanic show on Disney where demons train children to be witches? It's just, come on. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
It's this weird world where I guess everybody's just learned selective hearing.
Yeah.
And selective reading, maybe. I don't know. What a world, Dan. What a world.
Yeah, so I watched that. And it's wholesome, not wholesome. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like there isn't magic in the show, because I established there is a witch character, and there's like a whole school of witchcraft or whatever, kind of like Harry Potter, but like, again, much like Harry Potter, it's like a thing of like, you have to be born a witch, and it's like a kind of like a mutants and X-Men kind of thing, where it's like a special power, and it's a fantasy world where one of their gags is like, oh, all the fantasy stuff in your world, our world, is stuff that's seeped through from our side. So this is a world where all fantasy creatures exist, including giraffes, who they claim they exiled to our Earth because they thought giraffes were too weird. Which is, I don't know why I thought that joke was so funny. She's like, have you seen the next on those things? Those freaks, But the other, this is going long already, but the one thing I do want to talk about is one of my big media experience that I really want to share with everyone is near the end of my time away, I got moved to a hotel room because there was a big COVID outbreak at my job, and this moved around to hotels. So I was alone in a hotel room. At one point, I was quarantined I was actually legitimately quarantined for like a week because they're worried that I've been exposed. And so I'm just in a hotel room with cable. And what old friend did I run into but Adult Swim? Have you been watching Adult Swim lately, Melvin?
No, I don't have cable at all.
Me neither. You'll be happy to know that Adult Swim is just as weird and strange as it's ever been. And so I got into this thing where I've said repeatedly, not on this podcast, but I may not have in the past, but the two things I really want to come back as nostalgia things is I would pay good money for like a live stream channel that did G4, like just played old G4 programming like X-Play and Attack of the Show and Judgment Day and Cinematech with the old advertising stuff. Because G4 was a channel that they really couldn't sell advertising for. It was part of why the channel eventually disappeared. So instead of traditional advertising, they'd have like weird little like skits and stuff, and they would have like just like weird nerdy things in lieu of traditional advertising. Adult Swim, like, and I would love a stream of old Adult Swim with the old bumpers and everything, and old music and the old programming and stuff like that, because those are the things that really are my nostalgic sweet spot. And lo and behold, I was able to kind of get that again, because I was just turned on the TV, Cartoon Network, 10 p.m. Adult Swim started up. They're playing, Family Guy, whatever, which Family Guy ages both wonderfully and horribly at the same time. I don't know how they managed to do both, but so I was able to watch what's new on Adult Swim. And are you familiar with any of their current programming right now?
I know Beef House. I know that Tim and Eric Beef House, but that's about it.
Have you watched Beef House?
No, I haven't. I really want to check it out.
So I watched some Beef House, and yeah, so Beef House, for those who don't know, is Tim and Eric doing a parody of 80s and 90s sitcoms. And it's exactly that. Like, you could be, I could picture somebody who's half paying attention turning on the Beef House and thinking they have stumbled across a legitimate old sitcom, because they play it completely straight, except for a few weird things here and there. So there's an episode where they do the whole like, oh, like Timmy, your aunt's daughter, like son is coming to visit us, and we got to take care of Timmy. But then like they just throw in these few weird Tim and Eric touches where like they play the trope of like, oh, this house has all these quirky characters with, there's a whole group of people called the Beef Boys who just live with them. And it's the Tim and Eric thing of like three older veteran actors who are a little off and weird, just playing these characters, and they just hang out and do weird things. I recommend watching it. If you're a Tim and Eric fan, you're going to think it's funny, but as a weird comedy that's only for people who love TV, it really works. Where they turn up the tropes of like a sitcom to 11, of like, we have to do this ridiculous thing for no reason, even though like just talking about it would fix the problem. They do that to like the nth degree, and it's very, very strange. So I recommend The Beef House if you haven't watched it. But there's this thing called there's this show called Ballmasters 9000, which is like a parody of anime and anime tropes. And there's the new season of Rick and Morty is playing on there, and it's really, really great. If you've been watching Rick and Morty,
I remember going to did a beach trip with a friend of mine, with a couple friends, and the one introduced the group to Rick and Morty. And after about 4 episodes, because they binged the entire first 2 seasons, after about 4 episodes in, I was like, I don't think this show's for me. And so I just went back to the room, and I was just on YouTube, or like, I think I played a game on my phone or something, and it was just not vibing with me. I wasn't really into it.
Dang, man. That's an unpopular stance to take on the internet.
Is it? I'm pretty sure most people now are like, Rick and Morty's the worst. Oh, maybe I just don't have a high enough IQ.
That's really it. You're just too dumb. I think the internet is more turned on Rick and Morty fans than the show itself. I really get that impression, where it's a thing of people like, yeah, Rick and Morty, it's so stupid. But then I see the same people being like, but I mean, I watched the show, obviously, but like, it's that thing where like people hate the fans because the fans are horrible. I'm not going to lie to you for a second and tell you the fans aren't horrible, but the show itself it's really unique. It's really interesting. I like the show a lot. And so the new season is actually really, really good, to be honest with you. And I recommend that you check it out if you ever get a chance. But yeah, but like watching Adult Swim was a weird thing where I was this weird low point of my life both times I've seen Adult Swim. When I was watching Adult Swim originally, I was a really depressed teenager, and like I would just stay up all night. And then like I was, I struggled with depression and mental illness issues and suicidal thoughts and all that stuff. And so I'd be sitting up and it'd be like 4 or 5 in the morning, not sleeping and just staying and I'm watching Adult Swim. And weirdly, that old friend of my lowest point in my life came back to me, where I am alone in a hotel room. I haven't seen my wife in months. I might have COVID-19. Like, people at my job are getting sick, and my job is horrible. And I was like, I'm crying out to God, what's going on in my life? Why am I here? What are you doing? Like, why have you brought me to this place? And there's Adult Swim again. And it was just the weirdest thing, where it's just like, you again. So I would just sit there and there's this show called The Persevering Truth, which is so incredibly strange and bizarre. They're playing Squidbillies, which I've always hated, and it was there again. And they played American Dad and Family Guy like 6 times each, and didn't play anime. They played My Hero Academia, I'm not gonna lie. And it was just this weird bookmarker for my life, where like Adult Swim just came back into the picture. So I'd have that. I'd have wrestling on my laptop, of course, playing too. And I was like, Dan, you've come so far in life. Like you went from watching wrestling in Adult Swim in a room in your parents' house to watching wrestling in Adult Swim in this hotel room, while your coworkers are in the other room drinking and partying, even though they really shouldn't. And there's a COVID outbreak happening. So I don't know. It was just this weird thing where Adult Swim's solid. Actually, shout out to Adult Swim. Like, if the new programming is the same sort of cutting edge, if you're not in the specific group that it's aimed at, you're just not going to get it kind of material. So what's that show? What's his name talks to you? Is a show a lot of people talk about on the internet, and I actually got to watch it finally, and it was actually really interesting and fascinating thing to watch. But yeah, so that is my media story, Melvin. I'm sorry I talked so long about nothing in particular, but I've been waiting 3 months to talk about all of these things. So here it goes. Solar Opposites is pretty solid. Also, Dirk Gently is pretty great. I've only watched a couple episodes. I didn't feel comfortable reviewing it. So, Dirk Gently, Holistic Detective.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed this little bonus episode. If you had a good time, don't be afraid to leave a review for Cinematic Doctrine on your respective podcast app. Also, if you want to support us financially, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine. Not only will you gain access to an exclusive poll that decides the movie we discuss each month, but you'll also gain access to an exclusive podcast called The SynDoc Pre-Show, where Daniel and I talk about movies, Christianity, and life itself. For as little as $3 a month, you gain access to all them sweet perks, as well as the express joy of knowing you're supporting us here on the podcast. Anyway, check the show notes for all our social links, and until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck! We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the Independent Theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.